I'm disappointed in myself and embarrassed and frustrated, but at the end of the day, we won, and luckily guys are happy going home.
I had a ton of confidence in Steven. Regardless of what happened before, the guy's made a ton of kicks in his career, and really no question he's gonna make that.
He's been a great kicker in this league for a long time, so everybody has adversity. He's gonna come on there and seal it at the end.
I'm very confident that'll get corrected, but again, like I said earlier, it's not on one guy. Whether there's some push or the snap, we got to make them. That whole operation, that was one of the keys to the game.
Various faces and voices in the aftermath of last night's Tennessee win 16-14 over the Broncos. When Derrick Henry said everybody has adversity, I thought his next line was going to be, Stephen Gostkowski just happened to have all of his on the same night. Because, multiple missed kicks, 3 field goals, 1 was blocked, 2 were missed, an extra point was missed, to the point where a chip shot game winner at the end of regulation was viewed as anything but a chip shot. I think the Titans ideally wanted to score the touchdown so they didn't have to suffer through a 25-yard attempt that did go through, that did provide the margin, Chris. But I don't know how a kicker recovers from that many misses. Yes, you got the win, but you shouldn't have had to win by only 2. It should have been an easy, comfortable margin. Right. This is the flip side of the early game. The early game was a 10-point margin, but the game was a lot closer. This was a 2-point margin, and the game wasn't that close, and it shouldn't have been that close.
Well, no, it shouldn't, but this is also a little bit, this is red zone issues, and if you're going to play this style of football where sometimes it's a little bit of like, hey, we're content on being a little bend, don't break on defense. We're going to chew up the clock, and we're just going to wear you down and be efficient that way. Yeah, when you have days like that where your field goal kicker's off or whatever, all of a sudden you look up and you go, man, we've controlled the football game, which the Tennessee Titans did for the most part last night. And you go, whoa, we're down in the fourth quarter? So that's kind of the bad of the style of play they play as far as in Tennessee. Gostkowski, I think he'll at least be able to, you make the game winner. Hopefully that'll give him some confidence. He can realistically say, hey, I missed the 47-yarder in the first quarter. Okay, it's first field goal of the year. It's 47 yards. It's not exactly easy. But, the other missed field goal in the third quarter and the missed extra point, they're concerning. And this is one of the greatest kickers of all time. He was knock him down bullseye every time up in New England for almost his whole career. So we'll see. He is one of those kickers, I think, Mike, that you maybe give a little time to because of his history and his clutchness. But if he has another week like that or another 2 shaky weeks, this might be like last year for them, where they're back to the drawing board in the kicking department and trying to find the right guy.
I just can't help but wonder, and I know it's been more than 4 years now, I can't help but wonder whether every time he's back in that stadium, back in Denver, he thinks back to the missed extra point in the first half of the AFC Championship game 2015, what the implications of that were later in the game. And I know you technically have to go back to that point and replay the game because it's a different mindset if that point goes through and the game is in position to be tied. And regardless, they could have had 3 Super Bowl wins in a row. And if I'm Stephen Gostkowski, at some point in the last 5 years, I have contemplated the reality that my missed extra point in Denver kept my team from winning 3 Super Bowls in a row. So anytime I'm back at that stadium, I'm going to have a hell of a time putting the ball between the goalposts.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. There's certain stadiums that don't sit well with players, right? Brady, you could say the same thing about him up in Denver too. But I would also argue that defense is damn well, and they have something to say about it. But I do think there is something to that. Do I think that might have crossed his brain at some point in pregame or getting off the bus that day? I wouldn't be shocked. That's how football players work, even kickers, which I'm not sure if we qualify them as football players or not. But yes, I know it was a cheap shot at the kickers. I'm sorry about that, but I'm not that sorry. But I think there is something I know in my limited experience, and I've had these conversations with other players, my father, there are certain stadiums you go in and whatever it is, it just looks like, man, I feel good in this stadium. The sight lines, the way the stands sit, the field just seems right. I'd get on certain fields and go, it doesn't seem like this field's 100 yards. I feel like I could throw the ball like the distance of the field. And then I'd get to another stadium and go, man, I can't quite see the distance of the receivers the quite way, and it makes you uncomfortable. And maybe that is one of these places for Gostkowski, but they got to get that fixed because that's the way style of football they play. They need to depend on their field goal. When you want to play defense, slug it out, run game type of football, Mike Vrabel style, it's an important part of their football team.
And it undermined the performance of Derrick Henry, who had 31 carries for 116 yards and 7 other touches in the passing game, earning his money. And it undermined, I think, the reality that Ryan Tannehill, there's something different about him now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's what he did last year, comeback player of the year. Was he the comeback player of the year? I always forget those awards, right? All I care about at the end of the day is the Super Bowl. Yeah, well, he came back from, that was Shireen Williams' argument. Coming back from stinking should not be comeback player of the year. She said that, not me. She's got Texas A&M license to say that. But he looks different. Maybe it's the contract that pays out $118 million over 4 years, more than Patrick Mahomes is going to make over the next 4 years, more than Deshaun Watson is going to make over the next 4 years. But he was carrying himself differently. And when you look at what Derrick Henry's been doing, and he continued that run, and Ryan Tannehill continued that performance from last year, and it's all overshadowed by the idiot kicker. And I don't mean he's an idiot, but that's just a phrase.
We know what you mean.
We could say liquored up kicker too. That was a Peyton Manning phrase. I'm not suggesting Stephen Gostkowski was liquored up. But Ryan Tannehill, 8 years after being drafted, has finally arrived.
Well, yes. And I would probably argue that's not even a fair statement all the way, but I know what you're saying. And I will say, I agree with you. I don't know. Every time they were down in a bad spot last night, did you ever doubt that Tannehill and them weren't going to make the drive or he wasn't going to make the throw? I think there is a different aura about him. I think it's, one we see with players from time to time when you finally get to a place where, man, I'm comfortable. They understand how I work. I understand how they work. And we've formulated this offense that works well for me as a football player and our team, and he can go out there and play and be loose and let it go. I didn't pick the Tennessee Titans to go to the playoffs, as you know. We did this on the podcast and all that. I will say after week one, after week one, and it was like the second drive of the game, I went, uh-oh. That was my biggest regret if I had to talk about any of my preseason picks or anything like that. Tennessee looks the part. I was very impressed with the way their football team looked last night. Efficiency on the offensive side of the ball. Got a few people banged up on defense, but you could see Clowney. They got size, physicality. Arthur Smith's got a nice system on offense. They're very multiple on the defensive side of the ball. And that's one I think I might regret severely because they looked damn good last night. I know there was only a 2-point win, but like you said earlier, I think it was more than that.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Don't throw in the towel on leaving them off the board yet. I think they're going to make it, but remember what you said going into week one, the value of continuity. The Titans have it.
Definitely.
The Broncos are working in a new offensive coordinator.
Yep.
Quarterback still has had only 5 starts entering this season, so I think the Titans had that advantage.
Definitely.
I see it as glass half empty because to get out of there with a skinnier teeth win is unacceptable. And you can't live like that if you're the Titans. You're going to lose too many games.
You will.
If you screw around like that and have missed kicks and other things that keep you from winning the game by double digits, which they should have done. Now, they could have and should have still lost the game. The Broncos should have had enough time on the clock to get Brandon McManus in range for a game-winning field goal, which would have been the game winner because of the missed extra point from Stephen Gostkowski. It would have been 17-16. The problem is Vic Fangio, losing by 2 points, had 2 timeouts in his pocket that cannot be redeemed for points. And after the game, he explained why he didn't use his timeouts. And after his explanation, I'm going to tell you why his explanation doesn't hold water. But first, here's Fangio explaining why he didn't use his timeouts.
Well, it was twofold there. One, their field goal kicker had obviously been having his problems. So I didn't want to extend the drive to where they could get closer, number one. And number two, we would have used the timeout, but we got the running back out of bounds. we would have used the second timeout, but they threw an incompletion, which would have given us one left when we got the ball back. So that was part of the thinking there.
Part of the thinking, but not all of the thinking, because here's the thing. By the time they got to the point where Derrick Henry ran out of bounds, there was an incompletion in the end zone when the Titans went for the touchdown. Ryan Tannehill to A.J. Brown. How A.J. Brown didn't catch the ball.
It was a great
but
throw.
By then it was too late. The ship had sailed. I went back and watched the end of the game this morning and looked at the clock and figured out when the timeout should have been called. There was a moment late in the game. The play started with 1:33 left on the clock. The Broncos were defending their 29-yard line. Titans hand off to Derrick Henry. He gains 13 yards down to the 16. That was when they should have called the timeout. The Broncos should have called the timeout. That was the moment where as the play ended, 1st and 10 on the 16, 1:27 was left when the play ended. 49 seconds were left when the next play was called. And after that play, the clock's still running. And they have this shot of Vic Fangio, who I think was trying to give off the Bill Belichick at the end of Super Bowl 49 demeanor. Like, I'm just going to not do anything and let them screw it up, right? And after 12 seconds of that, Mike Vrabel decided, well, I better call a timeout because I'm going to screw around and run out of time here. We're going for the end zone. We're not settling for a field goal because the guy may miss it.
Yeah.
But that was those two plays. Not calling the timeout when the clock went from 1:27 to 49 and then letting another 12 seconds bleed off before Vrabel took the timeout. Those are the two moments where Fangio should have instantly called timeout. And all other things being equal, and I know that things may have been different if the timeouts had been called, but all other things being equal, there would have been 1 minute and 7 seconds left when the Broncos got the ball after the field goal try.
Right.
All other things equal. I went back and did it and cross-referenced it and did the math. 1:07. And when you look at how close they got with 17 seconds,
they would have
you give them another 50 seconds, they're going to have a chance most likely for Brandon McManus to win the game.
Yeah, I will say I don't think it's an easy decision. I would have liked to have seen him called the timeouts as well. Even that. I'm trying to think I'm remembering right here because it was late and I was like dozing in and out and going like, hey, come on, Chris, wake your butt up. Stay awake here. But he also wasted one of the timeouts with a pretty bad challenge, right? Earlier in the second half where he
had all three.
He had all
three timeouts.
Okay, sorry. I guess I'm thinking of early in the first half, the challenge.
There was a challenge that made no sense.
No sense.
Right,
that's the one I was thinking of. That's what I'm thinking
it was
of.
No gain. It was a no gain. Like 5 yards. Big deal. You're putting one of your timeouts on the line for 5 yards. Why are you doing that? That's what you're thinking.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. So I got that confused. For some reason, I thought there was 2 timeouts left at the end. But I this day and age in the NFL, I err on, okay, if you know you're going to be down, I do err on let's give yourself time and give your quarterback time to go down and kick the field goal instead of the old school, I'm going to wait it out and see what my defense can do. Now, what's a little different, I think, about the scenario we saw last night is what Vic Fangio brought up. I think he is afraid to call timeout because he's going, they're dangerous on offense. And really, they didn't stop Tennessee very much. Tennessee went up and down the field on them. So I think he's a little scared there to go, okay, if I call timeouts, this might embolden them to throw the football or do something like that. And then we will need a touchdown to go down and, have to win the game that way. And I also think he's thinking like, hey, they might actually push the limit and throw the ball and stop the clock anyways here because they might not trust Gostkowski to make this field goal. They have to go for the end zone either way. So as much as I would have liked to have seen him call the timeout, I can't sit here on a Tuesday and just go, gosh, that was stupid or whatever it was. That's what I said at the end of the Rams-Cowboys game when McCarthy didn't kick the field goal to make it 20-20. I thought that was stupid. This one, I just go, hey, I would have done it the other way, but I understand where he's coming from on this, especially with the way Gostkowski was hitting the ball.
But, the argument, he didn't want to give them enough time to get closer. They got closer. They were on the 16. Yeah. The moment he should have called the first time out,
enough.
They were in extra point range, plus 1 yard.
Yeah.
So that's where it falls apart for me. It's not
you.
like the difference between the 40 and the 26. It's the 30 and the 16. that was the moment you start doing this. And that was the moment where Brian Greasy, I think it was, on the broadcast saying, hey, you got to use your timeouts here at some point.
Yeah.
Now, here's another one for you. Then we got to take a break. End of the game, the Broncos get the ball to their own 43. Okay? 2 seconds left.
Yep.
And I did the math real quick. And we're in Denver. Mile high air, thin air. We talk all the time about all the long field goals guys have done in practice and yada, yada. 43-yard line for the snap. That's a 74-yard field goal. Whoa, 74, ridiculous. No one would ever do that. Look, I put the link in the story that I posted this morning about the failure to use the timeouts. Brandon McManus has made a 73-yard field goal in Denver in a practice setting, not just me and my holder, but a practice snap set hold with a defense there, with fans there, more fans there than there were in the stadium last night. Why in the hell, I mean, all those factors in play, why in the hell don't you try a 74-yard field goal instead of some draw it up on the back of a napkin, throw it up in the air and see what happens? And the final play was a joke. It was Drew Lock throwing the ball to a big green sea of nothing.
Yep.
Why not put Brandon McManus out on the field for a 74-yard field goal? It would astounded me, and I know we don't want to criticize our colleagues at other networks, but nobody even said, hey, we're in Denver. This guy's kicked a 73-yarder in practice before. Why aren't we at least considering the possibility of kicking the field goal here?
Yeah, I mean, in Denver, you got to think differently. Field goal kickers are worth an extra 4 or 5 yards in that atmosphere, or, you know, with the way the air is so thin and everything like that. It certainly would have crossed my mind. It would have. And now, again, I would have liked to have known, you know, where was McManus hitting at consistently in pregame? See, those are the other things that you got to take into account too.
Should have come up. That should have come up.
I know
he was struggling with the long kicks.
Right.
I'm just,
that's what I'm saying. So I don't know, but
right.
I'm just saying that's the things I would have liked to have heard too from the telecast, just to go, hey, I was watching him, and you know, he was 60. He was good from there, but they moved it back to 64 in pregame, and it fell apart or whatever like that. And I'm hoping Vic Fangio would know something like that. But it's worth the thought always. You're right. I mean, in that scenario, with them, all the defenders back, you know, now you got, you know, some good defensive linemen on that Tennessee defensive front there. Like, do you really think you're going to be able to buy time to get everybody down there, do that? I would have thought very seriously about taking a shot at that field goal and just seeing what happened.
Yeah, and it's a moment, too. Look, I'm being selfish.
Yeah.
We want that moment, no matter what happens with the kick. As a football fan, you want that crazy oddball, I can't believe they're lining up for a 74-yard field goal. The ball is placed on the 36 on the other side of the 50, for crying out loud. So that's what I was kind of rooting for, and I know the Broncos ultimately want to win the game, but when you have a guy that's made one in 73, now Vic Fangio wasn't the coach at the time, but you'd like to think he has an understanding of the range that his kicker has.
Yeah.
You at least the thing that struck me, you could tell by the demeanor of everyone on the sideline, it wasn't being discussed. It wasn't discussed in the booth. It was just like not even a thought. I looked at the Vic Fangio post-game press conference transcript. Nobody asked him, did you consider kicking the field goal? This is Denver, for crying out loud. How do you not consider it? How do you not do it? That's a separate question. But how does it not even land on your radar screen? That's what amazed me, Chris.
Yeah, I get you. But I'm going to err on that Vic Fangio knows more about this situation than we do. And even when
nice if somebody asked him about it.
No, you're right. I think that's really what we're wondering, or why didn't anybody bring that up? But this is a pretty smart football coach. I would think there's something more to it. And, you know, I would also think that's probably something that gets asked of him today, maybe when some of the media there in Denver gets to digest the game a little bit more and it does cross their mind. But with the McManus, again, when he made the 70-yarder, 73-yarder and done all those things too, you know, again, what are the elements like? Was it legit? Was it off a tee? I don't know if I know.
It was. I just said it was in a practice setting with a defense.
It was
snap.
Okay,
hold,
I didn't
kick.
know. I didn't hear the defense all that part.
It
okay.
was a real set. It was a live special team setting,
right,
with more fans behind the goalpost than there were in the entire stadium.
Okay.
Last
Sorry,
night.
I missed you on that one. Sorry,
yeah,
I was looking up
right.
stats and things like that. My fault.
That's all right.
Yeah.
You don't listen to me. That's fine.
I always do. I don't
listen
text
to me
like you
return.
do. I don't do that while you're talking, jerk.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.